Humans are, to say the least, beautifully complex. From building amazing structures that rise above the clouds, that retain their opposing sides after thousands of years, to being capable of feats of technology and with it discover distant worlds and soon to embark in interplanetary voyages. Being art, science, or philosophy, our greatest achievements come from our constant share of knowledge from generation to generation. This process of sharing lessons learned is with us since the beginning. Pretty impressive legacy to have, right? And still, we have within us an even bigger and longer legacy of knowledge, handed down for millions of years: our body. For millions of years, nature carved the mechanisms that we today see in all living creatures. Our body is pretty smart, to say the least. It can adapt itself to different conditions and has the ability to defend itself against threats and learn from those lessons. If you ask me, it's pretty useful not to worry all the time if I'm breathing, pumping my heart, or digesting my lunch. These functions make part of a bigger system called the autonomic nervous system. Some of these functions can be controlled by us, for example, stop breathing for a few seconds, and others happen on the unconscious level, like blood pressure. And what's interesting to see is that these functions cannot be controlled by us by command, but doesn't mean that cannot be affected. Countless studies exist connecting the rise of the heart rate and blood pressure with long exposures to stress. When a person experiences a stressful mental condition, the physical body starts to suffer. Body posture can even change to a closed, almost fearing look reflective of the mind state. It seems that the mind is the key here. If we can control our emotions, thoughts, and feelings, we can impact the whole body. But unfortunately, this is not that simple. Unlike the body, the mind is arguably just a series of electric impulses and chemical reactions, which we perceive and label, for example, as love or as a nice memory. But although scientific, this explanation doesn't help us to understand certain behaviors and how to fix certain mental problems. And here is where psychology enters, the study of the mind and behavior. Within psychology, there are many approaches to understand the mechanisms of the mind, but today I want to dive into a specific school of thought, psychoanalysis. This theory of the mind seeks to understand the unconscious and how do irrational forces influence actions and thoughts. In other words, how the unconscious influences our personality. It's impossible to talk about psychoanalysis without talking about Sigmund Freud, the creator of this school of thought. Freud contributed with many different ideas, for example, the Freudian slip, where an error in speech reveals a conflict between the unconscious, or dream interpretation, where a dream is analyzed to reveal a meaning to the mind of the dreamer. One of the most interesting is Freud's work on the structural model of the mind. He divided the mind in three entities: the id, the ego, and the superego. In this view, the id represents the unconscious, pleasure-seeking, childlike component of the mind. The superego represents the moral components, more or less like a compass between the right and wrong, and the ego is the conscious part that finds a balance between the id and the superego. For Freud, the psychological afflictions began because of this conflict between the id and the superego. Because of this, the ego cannot find a balance between short-term pleasure and long-term goals imposed by society, so it creates defense mechanisms. The job of the psychoanalyst is to bring these defense mechanisms to light and, in a way, dissolve them. One of the biggest criticisms on this theory is the constant obsession on the sexual. For Freud, the id is driven by the libido, a force that seeks pleasure. Concepts like the penis envy, where women experience anxiety for not having a penis, or psychosexual stages of childhood drove many in the field away from Freud's theories. One of them was Carl Jung. Jung was also a psychoanalyst who worked for many years under the guidance of Sigmund Freud. At some points, Freud even called Jung his crown prince and successor, which didn't stop Jung from disagreeing with him. Jung believed the unconscious as seen by Freud was incomplete and too negative. For him, the libido or the sexual drive of the id wasn't the sole responsible for the personality. After analyzing many patients, Jung started to formulate a deeper level of the unconscious could exist. A level common to all humans that resulted from our evolution as a species. He called this the collective unconscious, and with it Jung could explain why we see the same symbols and meanings in different societies and religions during human history. This new realm is populated by archetypes, a way to classify groups of ideas that arise from the unconscious. For example, one of Jung's archetypes is the wise old man. This idea is connected to a wise, kind, old father figure who offers guidance and acts as a mentor. It shows up in almost all cultures, not necessarily on this specific form, but they share the same traits. An archetype is then a tendency to experience things in a certain way, a tendency shared for all humans alike. As Jung said, these archetypes have no form in our mind. There isn't a wise old man figure. That's the form it takes when the archetypes manifests in the outside world. Archetypes are like black holes. We cannot see them directly, we can only see their influence. In the same way, archetypes can be detected by their influence in mythology and history. There are many of these archetypes. One can dedicate a whole life studying them and their influences. In later video I want to study some of them in specific, namely the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. But now let's back off for a second. By now you might be thinking, how can all of this help you in your journey of self-improvement? Let me ask you something. Just counting today, how many actions did you do unconsciously? How many videos did you watch before this one without even thinking about it? This video brings to awareness the idea of the unconscious, and if we understand how it works, or at least how to make sense of it, we will be in some way liberated. Like Jung said, man's task is to become conscious of the content that press upwards from the unconscious. Bad habits like procrastination and addictions all have roots on this part of our minds, which we now can understand a little bit better. That is a byproduct of the human condition. As our heritage, we should embrace it and nurture it, and maybe we might be able to create a stronger and empowering structure. We are beautifully complex, don't you agree?